The barrage is more than just noise. It is a physical weight that collapses bunkers and severs communication lines. For months, Allied intelligence had dismissed the possibility of a German offensive. They believed the Wehrmacht was a broken beast, capable only of a fighting retreat. They were wrong. Under the cover of heavy fog and strict radio silence, Adolf Hitler had massed 28 divisions, nearly 250,000 men, right under the Allies' noses. As the steel rain lifts, a new sound emerges from the tree line. The high-pitched whine of Maybach engines and the rhythmic clatter of wide steel tracks. Through the mist, the terrifying profiles of Tiger IIs and Panthers materialize. The German plan is audacious, born of desperation. If they can punch through the thinly held Ardennes, seize the bridges over the Meuse River, and capture the vital port of Antwerp, they might just starve the Allied armies of supplies and force a separate peace treaty. In the first hours, chaos is the Germans' greatest ally. The 106th and 28th Infantry Divisions find themselves swamped by a gray tide of Volksgrenadiers and elite SS Panzer units. At the Lossheim Gap, the thin line of American resistance begins to fray. Men leap from foxholes, half-dressed and shivering, only to find German paratroopers already in their rear. They're everywhere. The radios crackle before going dead. Colonel Bruce Clark of the 7th Armored Division receives a frantic update as he rushes toward the vital crossroads of St. Vith. The bulge is forming. A massive wedge being driven into the American line, 30 miles deep and 60 miles wide. To the north, the 6th Panzer Army, led by the ruthless Sepp Dietrich, is the primary hammer. To the south, the 5th Panzer Army aims for the rail hub of Bastogne. But as the initial shock wears off, the militia of the American line begins to stiffen. In small villages and at nondescript road junctions, squads of GIS realize there is nowhere to run. They must hold, or the entire Western Front will fold like a map. At Lanzerath, a single intelligence and reconnaissance platoon of just 18 men prepares to face an entire battalion of German paratroopers. They check their ammunition, squint through the falling snow, and wait for the gray ghosts to emerge from the pines. December 17th, 1944. A snowy ridge overlooking Lanzerath, Belgium. Lieutenant Lyle Buch, Jr. watches through his binoculars as a column of the 9th Fallschirmjäger Regiment marches down the road in tight formation, seemingly unaware that 18 pairs of eyes are tracking them from the tree line. The Germans are confident, buoyed by the rapid collapse of the forward outposts. Buch waits until he can see the breath of the lead officer. Open fire! The chatter of .30 caliber machine guns and the rhythmic ping of M1 Garands shatter the morning. For the next 20 hours, this tiny I&R platoon holds up the entire spearhead of the 1st SS Panzer Division. It is a microcosm of the entire battle. Hitler's grand timetable is being bled white by small groups of Americans who refuse to read the script of their own defeat. While Bauch's men hold the flank, a much darker shadow falls over a crossroads near Malmedy. Here, elements of Kampfgruppe Piper, the armored tip of the SS Spearhead, intercept a convoy of the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion. Over 100 American prisoners are herded into a snow-covered field. The air is thick with the smell of diesel and the idling roar of king tigers. Suddenly, a German officer draws a pistol. A machine gun opens up, and the field becomes a slaughterhouse. The Malmedy massacre ripples through the Allied lines, not as a cause for surrender, but as a catalyst for a cold, murderous resolve. Word spreads via grapevine telegraph. The SS are taking no prisoners. The American GI, often seen by the German High Command as a soft, pampered soldier, begins to fight with a feral intensity. Meanwhile, behind the lines, the devil's work begins. Under Operation Greif, German commandos led by the scarred Otto Skorzeny dress in captured American uniforms and drive captured jeeps. They switch road signs, cut telephone wires, and spread rumors that General Eisenhower has been assassinated. Panic grips the rear echelons. At checkpoints, high-ranking generals are held at gunpoint by nervous MPs and forced to prove their identity by naming Mickey Mouse's girlfriend or the winner of the last World Series. Yet, despite the sabotage and the terror, the German Schwerpunkt, the point of maximum effort, is slowing. The roads of the Ardennes are narrow, winding, and choked with slush. The massive King Tigers, weighing nearly 70 tons, are fuel-hungry monsters. Every hour spent clearing a stubborn American roadblock at a bridge or a village is an hour the Germans cannot afford. In the north, the 1st and 2nd Infantry Divisions hold the Elsenborn Ridge like a stone wall, refusing to give Dietrich's 6th Panzer Army the breakthrough they so desperately need. This forces the German momentum to shift south, toward a small town where 7 key roads converge, a town called Bastogne. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, sitting in a cold office in Versailles, finally realizes this isn't a local raid. It is a total gamble. He turns to a man who lives for the gamble, Lieutenant General George S. Patton. "George, can you get to Bastogne?" Patton, a pearl-handled revolver on his hip, doesn't hesitate. "I can attack with 3 divisions in 48 hours. His staff thinks he's insane. The roads are sheets of ice, and his army is currently facing east, not north. But the race is on. December 20th, 1944. The perimeter of Bastogne, Belgium. The fog is so thick it feels like a wet woolen blanket. Inside the town, the men of the 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles, dig into the frozen muck. They arrived in open-topped cattle trucks, many lacking winter coats, some even lacking ammunition. They are now completely surrounded. To the Germans, Bastogne is a nuisance that must be bypassed. To the Americans, it is the cork in the bottle. By December 22nd, the German commander, General Heinrich von Luttwitz, senses the end is near for the trapped Americans. He sends a formal surrender demand under a white flag, citing the total encirclement of the town. When the message reaches Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, his initial reaction is visceral and famously brief. "Nuts." The official reply delivered to the stunned German emissaries reads, "To the German commander, nuts, the American commander." Outside the heated command bunkers, the reality is far less bravado. In the Bois Jacques woods overlooking the village of Foy, Easy Company of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment huddles in foxholes that have become ice coffins. Mortar rounds scream through the canopy, showering the men with tree bursts, lethal splinters of wood and jagged steel. Medic Eugene Rowe moves from hole to hole, his supplies exhausted, his hands stained with the blood of men who are freezing to death even as they bleed out. The German panzers circle the town like wolves, probing for a weak spot every time they charge. They are met by a desperate wall of screaming eagles and the remnants of the 10th Armored Division. The Americans are out of food, out of shells, and the weather, the Hitler weather, remains a steadfast German ally. The heavy cloud cover keeps the Allied air forces grounded, their thousands of fighters and bombers useless on the tarmac in England and France. But miles to the south, a miracle of logistics is unfolding. Patton has done the impossible. He has pivoted his entire Third Army 90 degrees in the middle of a blizzard. Thousands of trucks, tanks, and jeeps are sliding and roaring northward. Patton, never one for subtlety, orders his chaplain to write a prayer for good weather. "Sir," the chaplain reportedly asks, "it's hardly a customary prayer to ask for help in killing fellow men." "I don't care," Patton snaps. "You get me a break in this weather." On December 23rd, the miracle occurs. The Hitler weather breaks. The sky turns a piercing, crystalline blue. Suddenly, the drone of thousands of engines fills the air as C-47 transport planes blanket the sky over Bastogne, dropping hundreds of colorful parachutes carrying the lifeblood of the 101st. Ammunition, K-rations, and medical supplies. Above them, P-47 Thunderbolts dive like hawks, their machine guns and bombs tearing into the exposed German supply columns that had been hiding under the fog. The bulge has reached its maximum extent. The German spearhead is just miles from the Meuse River, but they are out of gas. Literally. Tank commanders are forced to abandon their King Tigers and Panthers in the snow because their fuel trucks have been incinerated by Allied air power. The initiative is slipping through Hitler's frostbitten fingers. December 26, 1944, 4:50 p.m., 3 miles south of Bastogne. Lieutenant Charles Boggess, commanding C Company of the 37th Tank Battalion, 4th Armored Division, peers through the salt-rimed periscope of his M4 Sherman, Cobra King. The landscape is a jagged waste of craters and black, burnt-out husks of vehicles. Ahead lies the village of Assenois, the final lock on the door to the besieged paratroopers. "Creighton," Boggess says over the intercom to his gunner, "give 'em everything." The Shermans charge, their 75mm guns belching flame as they barrel through the German lines. At 4:50 p.m., Boggess spots a man in a paratrooper's uniform crouching in a foxhole near the road. The man looks wary, his rifle leveled at the tank. Boggess leans out of the turret and waves. "Come on out," he shouts. "This is the 4th Armored." The siege is broken. The Screaming Eagles and the 4th Armored link up, creating a narrow, precarious corridor of steel into Bastogne. But the battle is far from over. Hitler, refusing to accept the failure of his gamble, orders more divisions into the fray. The bulge is no longer an offensive. It has become a meat grinder. January 1945 brings the coldest winter the Ardennes has seen in 40 years. The thermometer plunges to minus 20 degrees Celsius. For the soldiers on both sides, the enemy is no longer just the man in the opposite trench, but the very air they breathe. Feet turn black with trench foot. Oil freezes inside machine guns, turning them into useless clubs. To touch metal with a bare hand is to lose skin. The Allied counteroffensive begins in earnest. From the north, Montgomery's British and American forces press down. From the south, Patton's Third Army grinds upward. They aim to pinch the base of the bulge at the town of Houffalize. The fighting is house to house, tree to tree. In the town of Wiltz, GIS fight from cellars as German Nebelwerfer rockets, screaming memes, turn the night sky a sickly orange. By mid-January, the German forces are being squeezed into a pocket. The elite panzer divisions, the pride of the Third Reich, are reduced to scavenging for fuel from abandoned American dumps. Thousands of German soldiers, many of them teenagers or middle-aged men drafted in the final levy, begin to surrender in droves. They are exhausted, starving, and disillusioned. The miracle on the Rhine has turned into a funeral march. The cost is staggering. The Americans suffer over 75,000 casualties, the bloodiest battle in U.S. history. The Germans lose upwards of 100,000 men and, more critically, their last reserves of heavy equipment. As the line finally straightens back to its original December 16th position, the road to Berlin lies open. Hitler's final bolt has been shot, and it has fallen short. The Reich is crumbling, not from a lack of will, but from a total exhaustion of its lifeblood. The Battle of the Bulge ends not with a grand ceremony, but with the quiet falling of snow over tens of thousands of fresh graves. The ghost front is silent once more, but the world it leaves behind is forever changed.